Hello and welcome everybody to an April beekeeping chat and Q&A. Tonight, I'm going to take your beekeeping questions, tell you what I've seen so far from my bees, discuss splits, swarming, and equalizing. As of this Sunday, I've been a beekeeper for 6 years, and I've learned a lot from making these mistakes. So without further ado, I'll talk about what I'm seeing in my area for this time of year. So I got to look at the hives right before the eclipse, and my car broke down on Monday. So I was pretty surprised because I didn't see much brood. They had a lot of the hives had a lot of bees, like between two and or not a lot, but moderately, at least two frames of bees, and the biggest ones are around 6 to 7 frames of bees. They all had eaten some pollen patty after I'd had them on there for 8 days, but I was a little bit surprised because I didn't see they didn't take that much pollen patty and they didn't have that much brood. Like I said, there's a lot of bees, but not much brood. So I'm not really sure what to make of that because I just kind of expected there to be a lot more brood because there's so many bees. But even the biggest colonies had maybe 3 full frames of brood. We got Grayson on here. Let us know in the chat, Grayson, and I'll highlight it. How's your season going? How are the bees and the new nukes looking? Yeah, so it's just weird to me. It's obviously a beekeeper expectation problem. If all of the hives don't have that much brood, if a few did, if you didn't, then I'd be worried about the bees because that would be telling me that some of them are just weaker. But since they're all kind of smaller and than I expected them to be as far as brood frames go, that just means that I had the wrong expectations going into it, and it's got nothing really to do with the bees. Of course, beekeepers have a plan, and bees often have completely different plans that don't involve us in the slightest. So that's kind of what I was seeing. The bees took some of my pollen patties, not all of them. Fortunately, one of the hives that I looked at was queenless. I only got to go through 1 yard, so 6 hives. But, not terrible, but not great. My guess is if I come back this week, I'd rather not look at them 2 weeks in a row, but this week or the week after, 2 weeks after I inspected them, they'll be looking much, much better. I just think I was just slightly early because last year I didn't get into them for another week, and I think we're a few days, maybe a week behind what it was last year for our season. So I think that's why I was seeing less brood and why they took less patty. But yeah, I'm not sure when the exact right time to open the hive would be, but I don't know. We'll still just play it by ear and see how it goes. I'm not really sure what the right move is with that. But I'm going to look at all my other colonies on Monday or Tuesday. It's supposed to be a high of 59 on both days. Hopefully, since it's a week later, this time of year, week's a lot. If it was during July, then a week wouldn't matter much. But they should be a lot bigger. And so I should be able to start to equalize at least. So I'll take a look at least 12 colonies, if not more, on Monday or Tuesday. And I try to make it formulaic, and I'm also, I'm trying to focus on getting better visuals so I could do it faster if I wasn't filming stuff. But basically, I'm going through the hive. How many frames of brood do they have? How many frames of honey do they have? So once I've got that figured out, I get a sense after a few hives, and I start to combine everything, or not combine everything, equalize everything. So, each hive should have at least 2 frames of honey, if not 3 or 4. And then every hive, I really want at least to have 3 frames of brood, if not 4. Ideally, it'd be closer to 4, but you just never know. So leave your questions in the chat, everyone. Anything to do with bees, especially spring. So Wildwoods Honeybee Farm, nukes are doing well. They're bringing in pollen. I saw some of the bees from the nukes bringing in pollen. I'm feeding them right now. My biggest hive is booming right now, put on a super, and they are starting to fix the drawn up comb since it wasn't in the best of shape. Hope to get some honey. Yeah, if you don't split them, Grayson, you'll definitely get some honey. Hopefully they don't swarm on you before the flow. And also, not only just swarming before the flow is common, especially if you don't want to split them, but yeah, you just really got to keep an eye on them and make sure they don't swarm on you, because I don't know how long till your flow, Grayson, but for me, it's another 2 months at least. But yeah, Grayson, just go ahead and put it in the chat. How long till your flow? I'm curious. Just let me know in the chat, guys. Like, how close are you to your honey flow, and are you seeing pollen right now? And if you're watching on the replay, put that in the comment section. I'm curious to hear. When it comes back to my bees, we just got our first pollen on I want to say the like 2nd of April, or I don't know, something like that. Yeah, I think the 2nd of April I started to see pollen. And when I was inspecting it last Monday, there were at least 2, if not 3, 4, or 5 different types of pollen. I got some footage on that, about 30 minutes of footage. I'm not sure if it's going to go out on Sunday or not. I'm just debating what to do. I was going to make it an equalizing video, but the bees had a different plan, so none of it's actually equalizing. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that, but I'll let you guys know in the future. But yeah, I'm seeing a fair amount of pollen in my hives. It's not like May or anything where you get like a lot of pollen, but each of them had, you could see they were starting to bring in and store a fair amount of pollen. So, moving in the right direction, even though we're certainly not to spring yet. Yeah. So yeah, just let me know in the chat how your spring's going so I can highlight it so we can get an idea of everything that's going on across the country. So I figured I'd hit on what I know best, which is the splitting and the equalizing. I already mentioned a little bit how I want to get everything to 3 hives, but there's a few other things that I think are really important when it comes to equalizing. I said this once, but I could say it 1,000 times, it'd still be true. When you're equalizing, you want to find the frames that are emerging brood. So the middle of the frame should be hatching out, and you should see baby bees sticking their heads out of the cells. And the reason why you want that emerging brood is because that stuff heats itself very quickly. It's going to hatch very soon. Then the new queen from the hive you just put it into will be able to lay it into it very quickly. And it didn't take a lot of heat for the other hive to heat it up, keep it warm once you transfer it. So it's really, really important when you're equalizing, is not chilling brood. I was going to try to equalize, and it was going to be 35 on Tuesday night. But if I put enough bees, I like to shake some more bees with that emerging brood. But those two things, shaking bees and choosing emerging brood, is very, very important in keeping those brood frames alive and not chilled. Got Caleb Long here. I've had pollen since the 15th of March, about a month ago, probably about a month till the honey starts coming in. Wow. So that sounds about right. For those who don't know, Caleb's in Pennsylvania, so that makes a fair amount of sense. That he's over. Well, first pollen. He's only 3.5 weeks ahead of me. But yeah, I hope that honey flow goes great for you, Caleb. How many colonies are you hoping to expand to this year? I'm curious. I'm trying to go from, 18. I've been saying 18, but one hive's probably not going to make it. So 17. I'm going to try to go from 17 to 40 and sell 10 nukes. So it'll be ambitious, but I'll get into this in a video. There's going to be some different circumstances with what I'm doing this summer. Stay tuned for that. I'm excited to share and let everybody know what my plans are for the year. Got a video in the works. I'm going to call it my split plan because big changes are coming. I'm going to do some things very differently this year. So instead of getting 72% over winter, hopefully I'll be closer to at least 90%, if not 95% over winter. But back to the spring. So yeah, guys, let me know in the chat or in the comment section, when did your first pollen coming in? What kind of pollens are you seeing? Like what's going on in your area? I think I really hit on the equalizing part of this. I'm about to go for plans to go for 30 minutes tonight. So I figured I'd, talk a little bit of splitting. I think it's, there's a lot of beekeeping that's art, an experience, a skill acquired through experience, but certainly one of the foremost and most important of those is splitting, because splitting is what makes you sustainable. I have bought bees every year, but it's typically only just 1 or 2 nukes. This will be the first year where I haven't bought a nuke, and that's because I want to expand. But it's so incredibly important if you're learning beekeeping to learn how to split and understand how your colony numbers in the spring affect how many colonies you get in the fall. So, I talk about with my mentees all the time, if you want, let's say you're going into the year with 5 colonies that have overwintered queens, and you want to go to 10 colonies before the end of the year, then you want to make at least, assuming you're buying mated queens, you want to buy like at least 8 queens for splitting. So 5 plus 8 is 13. If you have 5 queens already going into the year that have not, 5 queens going into the year that are already in their second year, you need to have backups. Like as a general rule, you want to have backups, but especially if you have queens that aren't in their first year, you need to have backup colonies. So if you want to have 8 colonies for winter in another situation, you want to have your 8 plus 2 nukes, or maybe 3 or 4 nukes, because you don't want to be stuck buying mated queens later in the season. You want to get them introduced or mated early in the season so you have those and you can combine them back for later. So when I'm doing spring splits, I really like to do 2 frames of brood, 1 frame of honey. I'll get back on this. I got some comments here. Wildwoods Honeybee Farm, I'm seeing pollen coming in. Pollen has been coming in here since early March, late February. I'm thinking our nectar flow has already started, but probably another week and we'll have a big enough flow for it. Yeah, is that the privet? What are your main parts of your flow, Grayson? I'm curious. We got short pants bee farm. I wish I could wear short pants beekeeping, but not yet. I'll get there someday. Excited to get one of Randy Oliver's queens this year. I did some VSH versions a few years ago to build up my apiary. I needed to add some different genetics anyway. Maples about to hit here. Great short pants bee farm. That's you're getting there. I think our maples, if I had to guess, probably in the next, I don't know, maybe next week sometime, we're about at that same stage. We have a lot more maples than I thought, and I haven't really noticed them, even though maples are arguably the most nutritious pollen and widely available. Like if you're planting stuff for bees, you really want to plant trees, and maple is one of those great ones to plant. But yeah, locust, tulip, poplar, depends on your area. But if you're planting for bees, definitely plant the trees because they produce thousands of flowers for every tree that you plant. Even though it takes longer, it's more of a long-term investment. It doesn't get cut down, by people mowing their lawns or mowing their lawns. Whoops. Caleb Long here. He's going from 11 to hopefully 20 or 25 plus 5 nukes for overwintering. Sounds like you've listened to my videos, Caleb. Yeah. So I hope that goes well for you, Caleb. Keep us updated here. Hopefully, my plan for the channel is to do some live streams till mid-June when I graduate, and then have to reevaluate at that point because I won't be, living at home anymore after that. Grayson, some honey, yeah. I hope, I bet there's some coming in now, but from what Bruce says, the privet's really about to hit. But I know you're north of Bruce by an hour or so. We got Roy Prow here. Northern Michigan maples are just starting. Haven't seen any pollen coming in yet. I'm interested in that, Roy. I'm surprised. I've seen pollen coming in. I don't think our maples have really bloomed yet. I'm going to really pay close attention, make sure I'm identifying the maples correctly. But I think ours are about to bloom. We have been seeing pollen for a little bit, so I'm curious what the different sources would be for different people. So back to the splitting. The most common split is 2 deep frames of brood, 1 deep frame of honey, and then some combination of the other 2 frames. It doesn't really matter. Some people put drawn comb, undrawn comb, an extra frame of honey. It doesn't really matter. But you need at least those 2 frames of brood. I've done splits with 1 frame of brood and 1 frame of honey, but I prefer the 2 and 1. And if you're introducing queen cells, then ideally you would let them go queenless for a few days, then smash the cells, and then add your queen cell if you time it up right. And likewise, I'd suggest a similar strategy if you're introducing mated queens. If you're doing a virgin queen introduction, that can get a little bit more dicey. You're going to have to leave them queenless so they don't have any larvae available for them to make queens out of. So like the splitting, like I said, the splitting is really I feel like it's one of the most important skills. There's a lot of important skills in beekeeping, but splitting allows you to not buy bees and waste your money on bees, and just to split your own so you can recover your losses. Like even if I just wanted to go back to what I had before winter, 18 hives, that would be easy, completely easy. If I was only splitting back up to 25, then I could easily, sell 20 or 15 nukes. So being sustainable isn't just actually having your colonies survive. It's being able to maximize the resources you have. So if you have those bees in spring and you stimulate them, you feed them right, you're going to have a lot of bees in May. And well, in my area, whatever month that may be. And for Grayson, Alabama, it might be, March is his splitting window. But regardless, having those bees and being able to be sustainable by splitting them, I'm not saying you should never, ever buy bees. I would be a hypocrite if I was saying that. I've bought, in the past, I bought about a nuke, maybe 2 per year. But that's just because I wanted to expand. I've had decent overwintering numbers. They definitely could be better, and I'm striving for that. But I've still overwintered in the neighborhood of 80-85% of my bees. And considering how much I've expanded, I think that's okay. It's not great. I can do better, but it's been good enough. And I've been splitting mostly all my own bees. And so that's why I've been able to recover each year without spending a ton of money buying bees. We got Grayson here from Wildwood's Honeybee Farm. We have privet. We have clover, and privet will probably bloom soon. Aster will be in soon, or is already in, and much more. But that is what is most common. Aster? Are you sure it's aster? Because here in Maine, we have aster blooming in September. Are you think of a different plant, Grayson? I think that aster is a fall plant, but I could be wrong on that. We got Short Pants Bee Farm here, poplar and pussy willow pollen. Yeah, see, I've always heard that pussy willow is like the first bee pollen of the year almost, but I've never really, like, we have some weeping willows that my dad planted 5 years ago or so, and I've never seen the bees on them. So I'm curious if anyone knows that if weeping willows don't produce pollen for the bees like the pussy willows do. All right. So we got a great question here from Caleb Long. After you see drone brood, how long do you wait to graft? Great question here. So if you're making walkaway splits, you're grafting queens, the typical protocol, there's a bunch of different factors, but just to hit the question first, after I see drone brood, typically I see drone brood in early May, like maybe the first week of May. And I don't typically, at earliest I've grafted is maybe the 14th or 15th. So ideally, you want to have drones walking around before you're grafting, because for them to be sexually mature, they need to be, I think Bob Binney says, like over 15 days old, 15 or more days old. And so it's very important that you go through those hives and make sure that you see a lot of walking drones before you graft. And then by the time the queen actually comes out and goes out to mate, so, let's say you graft 2 weeks after you see drones, a fair amount of drones, not just like your first couple drones, then you're way out of the window and you should have a lot of drones, because if you graft a week earlier or like a week after, or when you start to see walking drones, you probably have enough drones and they're probably somewhat old, but what's the point in grafting or making walkaway splits unless you have a ton of bees or a ton of drones for those queens to mate with? Bob Binney did a video with Keith Delplane at the University of Georgia, I believe, talking about I'm going to mess up the word, polyandry. So the amount of drones that a queen mates with is a determining factor in how good of a queen she is. And so if you wait that, I would say at least a week, if not 2 weeks to after you see a lot of drones walking around, that's when I'd suggest you start grafting. The other signs other than the drones are your hives starting to make queen cells? That's kind of the easiest thing. If you start to see hives making queen cells, then you're not too early. If all your hives are weak, then it's kind of hard to know. But if you have at least one strong one, you'll start to see when they're kind of rearing to go. When the bees start making queen cells, it's definitely time, or you definitely have the ability at that point to graft or make walkaway splits. But yeah, watching drones, knowing what's in the environment, knowing how cold the nights are typically for that time of year, all factors in determining on when to graft or make walkaway splits. We have Grayson here. We have drones right now, a lot of them walking around. Yeah, I mean, you're way ahead of all of us up here, Grayson. I mean, in Southern Alabama, it's months ahead. Bruce was breaking out splits. I know he's a little south of you, but he was breaking out splits in like mid-February, late February with mated queens. But still, nonetheless, even if I was splitting with mated queens, the very earliest I could do it is maybe in like 2-ish weeks in late April. So Short Pants Bee Farm here. The package, this package will pussy. I think he's trying to say the pussy willow is a short bush, but the pussy willow is a short bush. Oh yeah, because we were talking about weeping willow. Weeping willow is a tree. I didn't realize pussy willow was a bush. So maybe that's got something to do with why I'm not seeing that pollen, the pussy willow pollen on, or not similar pollen to the pussy willow on the weeping willow. Thank you for that, Short Pants Bee Farm. I didn't know. This package will be the first in 6 years. Yeah. Some years are tougher than others, but I haven't bought a package. Well, for myself, my little brother bought some packages. My little brother bought some packages a few years ago, maybe like 4 years ago, but I haven't bought a package in a while. I just stick to the nukes generally. So I have walking drones in large colonies. Do you think 2 weeks from now is too early to graft? That's a great question, Caleb. So it also depends on this: is what are your average temperatures? Um, queens take 16 days to develop. You're taking a larva that at the youngest would be 3.5 days old. But let's just say you take one that's a little on the older side, like 6 days, or that'd be really pushing it on the older side. But just for argument's sake, 6 days in. So she'd hatch in about 10.5 days. And since she's hatching in 10.5 days, you will be, 10 days, 2 weeks from now. Yeah. So I think that you'll be good if you graft in 2 weeks. But sorry. Back to what I was saying was the 10 days till she hatches, maybe a few more days till she mates. So you're looking at maybe 14 days. Let's just say 2 weeks from now. What is your average forecast? I don't know if this is still true, but past research has shown that queens don't really get mated well unless it's at least 70 degrees. And so if you check your average forecast, just type in your town, average yearly forecast, then you can hit month. There's this website I use all the time. It's called Weather Spark. And go in there, punch in your numbers, and figure out what the average daily highs are for that time period. And it should give you an idea of whether it's going to be roughly warm enough. I should check what mine is for late May. Typically, I've grafted on the 14th, 15th, or I've also grafted on the 21st. So I had extra time to make splits over Memorial Day weekend because I'm still in high school. So I think you probably will be good if you graft 2 weeks from now. But like I said, just punch in those on WeatherSpark, your town. You'll be able to find out what your average daily highs are during that period. They should be close to 70 degrees for the queens to get properly mated. So that's another trick to figure out if it's time to split or graft yet. Here we are. I won't have any queen cells ready to the end of May. The package is the only way to get a Randy Oliver queen. Due here the first week of May. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, his queens are in high demand. I believe, I could be misquoting him, but a third of his bees he doesn't have to treat at this point. He's the king of alcohol washes. His commercial beekeeping operation does thousands of them a year. So he's been able to make it so only about 2/3 of his operation has to be treated. The other third is mite resistant enough that they don't need to be treated anymore. But yeah, so I guess you had a pretty good winter then, Short Pants Bee Farm. But yeah, he said he won't graft, or I won't have queen cells ready till the end of May. Same here. I bet we have a similar season, Short Pants Bee Farm, because like I said, I like to graft. I've grafted on the 14th, 15th, and 21st of May, and I'm hoping maybe the 15th again this year. That would be my goal. Make up 2 cell builders the Corey Stevens way. Basically just pull out the queens and drop in the grafts 24 hours later. Hoping to get 60 cells, or I'm going to graft 60. So I'm betting that I'll get, maybe 40-ish or so. But if you guys have any questions about splitting or grafts or queens, swarming, anything, just put them in the chat and or in the comment section, and I'll get back to you on that. I'll highlight them on screen. But yeah, it's going to be a wild year. Beekeeping always is. It's always exciting, but that's what I live for. It's just, you never know what's going to happen, and that's part of the thrill of it. And I think that this year will be more unpredictable than it's ever been for me. But I'm curious. I don't know if anyone has an experience using oxalic acid dribble with like oxalic acid dribble and the delivery method being glycerin. I think I want to do this, and I don't know. Just let me know if you have any experience with this in the comments or in the chat. But I want to do this before I sell my nukes. So my goal is to sell 10. I'm going to pre-sell 5 in the coming weeks. So I'll make a post on my YouTube channel, and you can send me an email if you're interested in a nuke. And I'm going to pre-sell 5, and then if I have more, then my goal is to sell 10. They're going to be $220 each and come with an easy nuke, and also there'll be a fresh, newly mated queen that I grafted from my highest UBO scoring colonies, which may not be that high. They probably won't be, but where was I going with that? Yeah, so I want to use glycerin oxalic acid dribble on my hives, on my nukes right before I sell them, because then they'd be 100% clean before I sold them. Because if I time it right, I can get the queen to lay, um, allow the queens to lay, combine all the ones that don't get queens back from the queen cell that I dropped in, let them lay for probably 8 days or so, and then do the glycerin on them. And so they'd be locked into the box and they wouldn't want to abscond, but they would also be broodless. And so, well, not broodless, but they wouldn't have any capped brood. And so all the mites would be phoretic. They'd be on the bees. And if that was the case, then I'd be able to kill 100%. So I'd be selling my 10 nukes with 0 mites on them. Or, not 0, but that's a small exaggeration, but a very, very low percent of mites. So here's a great question, Caleb here. Why not use OA vapor? And the reason why I'm not using OA vapor is because I'm using temporary nuke boxes. So I couldn't use vapor on, it would burn the nuke boxes. I don't have a vaporizer, but I could get one. It's just that it would burn the nuke boxes since they're plastic. So dribble is kind of my only shot, because I'm not I'm not going to buy a bunch of wooden nuke boxes. So I don't know. That's just kind of my thoughts on that. I wish I could do that, but I think Randy Oliver has a bunch of research on glycerin oxalic acid dribble, I believe. So I will look into that. And if I do it, I'll try to video it. This summer is going to be super busy for me. I'll probably be working 60 plus hours a week. So I don't know how many videos I'll be able to get out. My goal would be maybe once every 2 weeks, but it might only be once a month. And I might do more of a, Duck River honey, or I'm trying to think of someone else who does it this way. Somewhat like Ian Stepler. So I'm just going to go through probably a large swath of time, edit it all together, and then put it into one video instead of a bunch of smaller videos. And then I've got that project going in the background. I've already taken a fair amount of footage for it. I'm going to have a video where I'm planning on it being about 2 hours, 2 hour video where I go through the entire beekeeping season start to finish, and explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it the whole year. And so it wouldn't be exactly like it would be if I was staying where I'm currently living. So, it's going to be a little different. The season's going to be different, but all that information and strategy will be, still in the video, of course. Caleb here, why not use a block of wood with a hole drilled in it? I hadn't thought of that. Have you done that, Caleb? I've never heard of anyone doing that. You would have to cut the block very precisely to fit in the entrance of an easy nuke. I feel like that would be some precision woodworking. My dad could help me figure it out, but that is definitely an option. But if I don't have a vaporizer, then obviously I'd have to use the glycerin. But I don't think it would be that hard. Like, I don't think it's going to be that much harder to use the glycerin, as long as I look it up and it wouldn't hurt, smaller nukes on the smaller side. That's kind of my idea. But yeah, I'm going to, you want the bees, the first of the new queen's bees, hatching when you're selling the nuke. And so that's kind of my goal. So if I make those splits on, like, let's say May 25th, it's going to be a wild day. I'm going to have to make, like 30 nukes or 35 nukes in one day, but I'll come up with my incubator full of cells, make all those splits, and then they should get mated in about 2 weeks-ish. And then that'd put me into early June, around the 10th of June. There's 31 days in May, though. So I guess that'd be June 8th. And then at June 8th, the queens will be laying. So about 3 weeks later, we're at, June 29th. So probably the last week of June is when I'm going to be selling those queens, selling those nukes. And it's kind of late, but I think it'll be worth it for my customers, because they will be 100% packed, every single one that I sell, and they'll all have a fresh, brand new mated queen. And so for most people will be in their honey flow at that time around where I live. And so if they drop those bees in, they should drop that first deep really quickly. And if they're double deep beekeeper, you might have to feed them a little bit during the dearth to finish them out, but they'll be top tier. I'll sell the absolutely 10 best that I have. So we're just about closing up. So good. Any last questions in the chat that you want me to answer before we head off here? Caleb Long saw a video about adding the block of wood to treat on the plastic nukes. Yeah, I guess it's a low-tech solution, but sometimes keeping it simple makes the most sense. So I guess I'll look into that, but I still need the vaporizer, and I'd have to get to do what you're saying, I would have to get a Instavat vaporizer, which is like over $500. And considering the transmission just crapped out on my car, I'm not sure if I'm going to have that kind of cash to spend, unfortunately. But we'll see how it goes. But we're rounding up into 30 minutes here. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I really enjoyed talking with you all through the chat, and I'll enjoy seeing your comments after the live stream. But I hope your spring beekeeping season goes well. Hopefully get a video out Sunday, maybe a couple videos out. I'm off of school this week, and so see you in the next video or stream.